It is 8:25 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It's the 10th day of August, 2026. This is episode 1369 of Bitcoin and RIP-110. It's the RIP-110. It's not a BIP, it's a RIP, because it seems to be dead. There was all manner of activity over the weekend concerning the BIP-110 fork, because it did end up, in fact, being a fork. Nobody signaled for it, and that's going to basically be our first story for today. And then we're going to get into a little bit more of that, where I'm going to continue that discussion until we get to the Clarity Act, because that's been delayed until September. And well, we'll talk about it. And then Trump media has abandoned their idea for a crypto treasury. And they've abandoned an idea for something else. I promise I'll get to that. And then in the second part of the show, strategy is in the news. Nostr magazine. I stumbled across this last night and thought it was rather interesting. So I want to kind of highlight Nostr magazine. Bitdeer, of all the miners, the Bitcoin miners, and all the news concerning how they're all going to AI, Bitdeer seems to be swinging the opposite direction. And North Korea will finish off the show. Looks like they're integrating artificial intelligence into cyber attacks, and they've got a particular target in mind. So let's talk about RIP-110. Bitcoin's BIP-110 episode is free market capitalism in its purest form, according to Omkar Godboll, writing for CoinDesk. Whether Bitcoin works better as a store of value or a payments mechanism can be debated, but one of its core appeals, its radically free market permissionless design, is not. The BIP-110 saga puts that design on full display. The Bitcoin Improvement Protocol, BIP-110, started as a proposal to limit non-financial data such as ordinals and inscriptions seen by some as spam to free up blockchain space. The proposal was debated in an open forum by the developer community, failed to secure broad support, and was effectively denied by distributed consensus. The key here is distributed consensus. No regulator or central committee banned it. The free market story continues, though. Supporters also got to exercise their right to form their own blockchain, forked or split from the original Bitcoin. They did so at block 961632 in an attempt to implement their preferred rules in the newer version in a voluntary move that was not forced by any regulator or middlemen. Miners quickly chose the more profitable version, the original Bitcoin blockchain. The new chain, which inherited Bitcoin's massive mining difficulty, attracted only a tiny fraction of hash power and produced only 2 blocks before grinding to a halt. Meanwhile, the original Bitcoin network continued uninterrupted, retaining virtually all activity, all liquidity, and all of its security. Quote, Bitcoin worked exactly as designed, Michael Saylor, founder of BTC Holding Company Strategy, said on X. Contrast that with the so-called free market economies of the world. Falling corporate profitability should trigger cost-cutting and layoffs, but electoral politics often leads governments to block that adjustment, resulting in prolonged industrial sickness. Or, when high inflation hits, governments issue subsidies that artificially prop up demand, fueling even higher inflation. The usual free market response of reduced consumption and price discipline never really get a chance to play out. Bitcoin's takeaway for the real economy is clear. The free market economy works when you let it run its course. As for the coin spot price, it continues to trade near $65,000 alongside a continued demand for downside protection. This week's U.S. inflation data is expected to influence the price trajectory. So that's sort of the overview. The fork did happen. There were 2 blocks mined on the BIP-110 version of the chain, and then it just essentially stopped. The difficulty is just too damn high. It can't produce that particular chain, the BIP-110 version of Bitcoin, cannot produce anything else simply because of the difficulty. Because they're operating under the exact same network rules as the actual Bitcoin blockchain. There was a lot of sniping on either side of this fork. The regular Bitcoiners, or the guys that, that sort of like me, that I guess, I am representative of the original chain insofar as it's not that I didn't like BIP-110, it's just I don't like anything about the way that it was brought to bear. That was really my only problem with BIP-110, because I wholeheartedly agree with, I would love it if spam were gone from the network. I would love it if ordinals and inscriptions didn't exist. I would love it if people would stop shoving massive amounts of data into their transactions, because I operate a node. And, it's like bloat sucks. It really does. It causes all kinds of problems. But I always have to fall back to my original position. Is this transaction that is being considered for inclusion into a block to be mined a valid transaction under the rules, under the consensus rules of Bitcoin? If the answer is yes, well, then it's a valid transaction and should probably go into the block. It's a weird place to be, because it's like, well, so you're for spam. No, I'm actually not for spam. I'm just for the consensus rules. And it's sort of like my position on the Bill of Rights. In the United States Constitution, we have a separate document called the Bill of Rights that lists 10 inalienable rights for the citizenry of the United States at its formation. And if the Bill of Rights was not accepted at the Constitutional Congress, then the Constitution was not going to be ratified by the signers who signed it. The only reason that most of the signers who signed the Constitution of the United States and ratified it was because of the inclusion of the first 10 amendments to the Constitution of the United States. With that said, it's sort of like one of these things where it's sort of like a patent application. If you can break one, I mean fully break, I'm not talking about like, scuttling one of the amendments or obfuscating one of the amendments or making one of the amendments essentially not viable, like the Fourth Amendment that protects our privacy, has essentially been eroded, and that started really in the 1980s with the war on drugs. So, but the amendment is still there. It hasn't been stricken from the record, right? So what I'm getting at is that there could have been an amendment in the Constitution that basically stated all park benches must be painted red. While that is a stupid amendment for a document as important as the Constitution for a nation, I would uphold that. I would say, yes, absolutely. Because if you can strike one of the amendments, then you set a precedence to be able to strike all of them, or any of the other ones, one by one, until all of it falls. And my point about this is, well, if you change the nature of a contract after you've signed that contract, essentially you're in breach of contract. And any other documentation that depends on that contract is essentially null and void. So let's say that we don't even have to do the park bench stuff. Let's look at the Fourth Amendment. It's been so crippled by war on drugs and AML and Bank Secrecy Act, and I mean, just the list of privacy infractions goes on and on and on. Let's just say that we had a constitutional convention and we decided to just, you know what, we'll just strike that amendment. Well, now you're in breach of contract. I know it's, well, it's not a legal contract. That's arguable. But one of the things that is not arguable is that the ratification of the Constitution of the United States depended on all 10, every single word that is in the Bill of Rights has to be there. Otherwise, the signers of the Constitution of the United States is the reason they signed is no longer represented. And therefore, the Constitution of the United States falls and the dissolution of the country can begin. And a lot of people will say, yeah, well, we probably need to all secede from the nation. And I'm not going to argue that right here. I'm just saying that without consensus rules, with just being able to change consensus rules, we just can't operate that way because nobody knows what the hell's going on a day-to-day basis. Even though the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution has basically been kicked in the crotch, over and over and over again, it's still there. And as long as it's still there, there's always a chance that we can resurrect it. But if it completely gets stricken, we got a problem. We have a problem. And this same logic structure is what I'm applying to why I'm for the consensus rules. If we just sit around and just, fork and fork and fork and fork and always continuously changing consensus rules to the point that some transactions are valid and other transactions are not valid, this is not a stable platform. And what happened over the weekend was we have a very stable platform. And it's sort of like what people say about democracy. Well, it's not the best system in the world, but it's the best one that we've got so far. Would you rather have communism? No, I certainly wouldn't. Do you want socialism? Well, I'd have to argue that we're kind of already there a little bit. Actually, quite a bit. But still, generally speaking, we're a democracy, and it seems to have worked better than feudalism or communism or any of the other isms. This is the reason why I'm sticking with the main chain, but I cannot drop the fact that Luke Dasher and all the BIP-110 guys, it's not as if they have a terrible argument about spam. It's just that all they ever said was, oh, it's just about child sexual abuse material or CSAM. No, that's sort of a red herring. And that's when I'm like, you guys are full of shit. You had a good argument when you just stayed with, getting rid of spam, but you didn't. You took it into the political mainstream with red herrings, calling people names, and I'm fucking over it. I saw this exact same fight play out in 2017. This is all we've done is replay 2017, except it wasn't as bad as 2017. But there's a couple of nuances here. When the fork occurred, one of the things that happened is that Ocean Mining, at ocean_mining on Twitter, that's Luke Dasher's mining pool. And they did some really good things. Ocean Mining allowed miners to basically be able to select their own block templates using Datum and Stratum, I think Stratum v2. They really, Ocean Mining, when it first came out, it was, I was all for it. I really was. I was all for it. And I'm actually kind of still all for it because right after the fork occurred with the BIP-110 fork, on the main chain, like the first block that was mined in the BIP-110 chain that actually caused the block was mined by ocean mining. The second block that was mined after the fork on the Bitcoin main chain was an ocean miner. And that caused a lot of confusion, because we know that ocean mining is Luke Dasher's outfit. So, they would have directed all of their hash power to the BIP-110 chain, but it appears that they actually didn't. Or did they? We've got to, after I finish this little piece right here, there's another one that I want to get into that causes even more confusion. But I want to read this post from Ocean Mining on Twitter. It says, update for ocean miners. We want to clarify yesterday's activity around the BIP-110 and non-BIP-110 mining options. For roughly 18 hours, some miners using Ocean's Stratum templates may have believed they were mining on the non-BIP-110 chain while their hash rate was directed to the BIP-110 chain. To eliminate any possibility that miners were disadvantaged, Ocean will make a direct Bitcoin rebate payment to affected miners based on the rewards they would have earned on the non-BIP-110 chain during that window. Approximately 0.3 Bitcoin will be distributed, with payments completed within the next 72 hours. We'll publish the transaction details once the payments are sent. The default endpoint is now back on the non-BIP-110 chain. Both options remain available, so every miner can choose where to direct their hash rate, your hash, your choice. So this does a couple of things. And the first thing that it did is explain why ocean mining mined the first block in the BIP-110 fork, but also mined the second block in the Bitcoin main chain after the fork, because people were actually able to choose. But the second part of what was said in this particular tweet seems to negate that. It says that they're going to make a payout to miners who thought they were mining actual Bitcoin, but their hash rate seems to have been redirected to the BIP-110 chain. So to make those people whole, they're going to pay out 1/3 of a Bitcoin, which, is not all that much monetarily wise, but the ramifications are pretty fucking severe. You thought you were mining actual Bitcoin, but in fact, your miner's hash rate on ocean mining was actually being redirected to the BIP-110 chain, and nobody told you. That links up pretty good with this next tweet that is actually it seems to be a screenshot from, I'm not exactly sure from where. I don't think it's from Reddit, but it's not from Twitter either. So I don't know where this is coming from. However, who posted it was Richard Whitman at Ghost of Whitman. And he says, and he's got the screenshot, but first, before the screenshot, he says this, quote, "Where's your hash rate going to come from?" End quote. Answer: from collusion with Ocean to illegally point people's hash to the fork chain while telling plebs to fuck off and throw away their bit axes. Those who were convinced this was plebs versus big banks were duped. It's okay. It happens. So he's saying all that in response to this screenshot of this person who's writing the following. One AZ Padres fan says this: reality check. At product guy has it right. I saved up for 2 years to buy my Umbral and my first 2 Gammas, and I literally just had to save up for 1 more year for my most recent NerdQ Axe++ Rev 7, so that I could point as much hash towards BIP-110 that I possibly could. Now y'all are just throwing all of that out, saying to just sell the old mining hardware, spitting in the face of all the regular Joes who don't have money flowing out of their ass. You force people to buy new hardware. Where's your hash rate going to come from? This is just, there's no, what am I trying to say? There's not really any saving grace here for Ocean Mining, Luke Dasher, and any of the BIP-110 guys who were saying, hey, point all your hash at BIP-110, buy some, bit axes, buy, all this, set all this up so that you can point as much hash to, the real Bitcoin, their version being BIP-110, as humanly possible. And then they mine 2 blocks and then the whole thing collapses. And now the BIP-110ers are all pulling BIP-110 out of their profile names. Half of them are saying it's over. The other half are saying that the fight is still ongoing. It doesn't really matter. It's just that this is kind of egregious. This dude spent a lot of money. He spent a lot of money to do his bit for king and country, and he got crapped on. And again, don't forget that people who were had no intention whatsoever of mining BIP-110, but had their miners pointed at Ocean Mining, their miners were actually mining BIP-110. They were lied to. The intentions of some, and not all, but some of the people behind BIP-110, it's egregious. Their intentions are egregious. Now there's a bunch of talk about, do we forgive them and do we keep them, keep them in the fold and all that stuff. I'm just done with the argument. All of the argument. I'm done with the fork. I'm done with BIP-110. I don't care. It's up to each individual to make their decision as to whether or not, they're going to be nice to Luke Dasher or any of these people. But I am basically not going to give anybody any grief at all, no matter what side of the chain they found themselves on. I'm not going to praise the people from the Bitcoin chain, and I'm not going to call the BIP-110ers a bunch of idiots. I don't think that this was a smart move, but I don't think they're idiots either. I'm frustrated with the fact that they took, again, I'll use the word egregious steps to get their way. But I'm not going to release any more of my energy to be mad or frustrated or anything else any longer. And they'll come back. BIP-110 is probably going to come back. It's probably going to be a little albatross hanging around our necks, as if we needed anything more to be hanging around our necks. Because the Senate keeps the Clarity Act alive, but moves the bill votes and sets it for September. This is out of Decrypt, Guillermo Jimenez. The U.S. Senate has taken its first formal step toward voting on the Clarity Act, with leadership moving early Saturday to tee up a vote on the crypto market structure bill and lock in a September date. Senate Majority Leader John Thune filed the motion to proceed on the bill, opening the multi-step cloture process the chamber uses to push contested legislation past its 60-vote threshold. The filing came too late to squeeze in a vote before senators leave on their August recess, but it queues up an initial procedural vote almost immediately after they return, with the first test set for 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, September the 15th. The cloture filing on the motion to proceed to H.R. 3633 is a procedural first step. It's not a passage, but it signals that Republican leadership intends to make the bill an early priority when the Senate reconvenes. The Clarity Act, if passed into law, will provide a formal legal structure for a cryptocurrency. Yes, we know. Moving on, today's move from the Senate follows Thune's decision this week to push the vote past the break rather than force it before lawmakers left town, a delay that was driven by Democratic reluctance to advance the bill. Republicans still need roughly 6 Democratic crossovers to reach the 60 vote threshold, a gap that is not closed since the measure cleared the Senate Banking Committee in May, with only 2 Democrats in support. Now negotiators have several weeks to resolve the dispute, still dogging it, the details of its illicit finance and law enforcement protections, the unresolved fight over stablecoin yields and rewards, and of course the government's ever-present ethics provisions covering President Donald Trump's crypto holdings. Lawmakers are still trying to secure a bipartisan agreement on provisions governing President Trump's crypto holdings, an addendum negotiated with the White House that would require him to divest from crypto-related businesses. Shoot, I just lost my shit. Hold on. Lawmakers are still trying to secure a bipartisan agreement on provisions governing President Trump's crypto holdings, an addendum negotiated with the White House that would require him to divest from crypto-related businesses. As of yet, there is still no word from the White House on the proposed addendum. Should the bill clear the Senate, it would return to the House for another vote before reaching Trump's desk. With the September window closing quickly ahead of midterm campaigning, the coming weeks are widely seen as the last realistic chance for the legislation to become law this year. Okay, so the preceding paragraph leads into the next story. Lawmakers are still trying to secure a bipartisan agreement on provisions governing President Trump's crypto holdings. Okay, that's one of the sticking issues. Well, this morning, Trump media announced that it's abandoning crypto treasury and prediction market ventures. Guillermo Jimenez, again for Decrypt. President Donald Trump's media and technology group has scrapped plans to launch a Crypto.com-backed CRO or Crow Treasury company and abandoned a broader digital asset deal with the company. According to a report by Axios, Trump Media, Crypto.com, and special purpose acquisition company Yorkville Acquisition Corp. Have mutually agreed to terminate the proposed Trump Media Group CRO strategy, a previously announced services agreement, and related digital asset products. The company cited, quote, prevailing market conditions and, quote, shifting business and stakeholder priorities as the decision maker. The venture would have licensed the Trump Media name for a company built around Crypto.com's Kronos blockchain and the Kronos token, which trades as CRO. When announced last year, the partner said it would become the first and largest publicly traded CRO treasury company by accumulating the token and generating additional returns from those holdings. The CRO token currently trades at 5 pennies, falling sharply following the news at around a $2.4 billion market capitalization. Interim CEO Kevin McGurn told Axios, the company is narrowing its focus after the market for digital asset treasury companies became increasingly crowded over the past year. He added that staking has become less important to Crypto.com, making it the right time for the companies to go their separate ways. The Truth Social parent company is also abandoning plans to integrate prediction markets directly into Truth Social. Instead, the companies will pursue a marketing deal that promotes Crypto.com's prediction market products to Truth Social users. Jeez. Oh my God. McGurn said the prediction market business has become crowded, making it a less compelling area for investment. Yeah, no shit, dude. Rather than operating prediction markets itself, Trump Media now sees greater value in acting as a distribution and data partner. Trump Media's relationship with Crypto.com had expanded over the past year. In October of 2025, Trump Media announced plans to launch Truth Predict, a Crypto.com powered prediction market integrated with Truth Social. In December, the companies unveiled plans for a publicly traded CRO treasury company with Yorkville Acquisition Corp., which was expected to hold billions of CRO tokens. In February, Crypto.com disclosed donating $35 million over the previous year to the pro-Trump Super PAC MAGA Inc. The same month, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency conditionally approved the exchange's application for a national trust bank charter. Democrats have repeatedly criticized Trump's expanding crypto ventures. Earlier this week, Elizabeth Warren and Richard Blumenthal, both senators, urged the SEC to investigate President Donald Trump's meme coin, arguing the agency should determine whether it facilitated fraud or unjust enrichment. The request is the latest sign of growing Democratic scrutiny of Trump's business dealings, specifically in crypto, ahead of November's midterm elections. That's the end of the article. I don't think that's why he did it. I think this is a concession that he's trying to give so that the Clarity Act passes. Because that's one of the reasons it's having a problem is Trump having all these dealings in cryptocurrency and prediction markets and what have you. And all of a sudden, like as if by magic, this massive deal that I told you about a few weeks ago here on this show, it's all not going to happen now. And not a word of that, of a word is written in this story that I just read you that connects it back with the fact that Clarity got pushed to September the 15th. And they need something different to occur. They didn't get it voted on when they wanted to get it voted on. They were able to push it to get it first on the docket September the 15th when these guys return. And if nothing had changed in the interim, we would be right back to where we started from. And lo and behold, here comes Trump saying, you know what? This deal we had, we're not going to do this crow token thing. We're not going to do the prediction market thing. We're just going to do some advertising for the prediction markets. I really do. I think this had everything to do with getting the Clarity Act across the finish line. And I'll bet you that Trump had to hold his nose to scuttle this deal on his side to get clarity through. Because as much as shitcoinery is, I don't know, I don't like shitcoinery at all, but Trump was good, he would have made hundreds of millions of dollars on that crow deal. He'd have made hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, on integrating prediction markets into Truth Social. And he's not going to do either one of those things. That's, in my opinion, clarity is why he made that decision, not any other reason. Let's run the numbers. CNBC, futures and commodities. Everything in energy is in the green, which means shit is not going well in the Middle East. Brent North Sea up 4 points to 86.89 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate up 4 points to 81.31 a barrel. Natural gas is up over 5%, back to $2.80 per thousand cubic feet. Gasoline is up 4 2/3 to $3.12 a gallon, and Murban crude is unchanged at this time. Metals are mixed, with palladium down 0.5, but gold is up 1/3 of a point to 44.12 7 dimes. Platinum is down 0.5 point, but silver is up 2.2 to $64.90 an ounce, and copper is up 2/3 of a point. Ag is mixed, mostly in the green today. Biggest winner is lumber, 1% to the upside. The biggest loser is coffee. A row of sticks to the downside, 1.11. And then live cattle is up 0.68%. Lean hogs up 2 1/4. Wow, I wonder what happened in the hog market. Feeder cattle is down 0.4%. Indices are mostly in the red, and that's not terrible. It's S&P is up by 0.04%. NASDAQ is down 0.13%. Dow is down 0.13%, and the S&P Mini is down almost 1/4 point. And then there's Bitcoin chilling out at, $64,170. Probably because of Saylor. We'll get to that. It's a $1.29 trillion market cap. We can only purchase 14.8 ounces of shiny metal rocks with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 20 million. 68,188 and 2/3 of. Average fees per block are normal, not too high. It's about 45 blocks carrying 84,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 3 sats per VByte. Low priorities will get you in at 1 sat per VByte. Mining has dropped 909 exahashes per second, so it's actually up from its low. It got back down over the weekend to like 870, I think. And that may have had more to do with the BIP-110 fork than anything else. Who knows? But I remain unconcerned. From 64K AI Agents Gang, which was Friday's episode of Bitcoin, and I've got Turkey giving me a palindrome boost, 1,001 sat. And then Tulips with 500 sats says, he says, I sent you a happy puppy face on your Fed Up episode, but you didn't read it. Go there, read it, and then you can go back to being sad. At the end, all these sponsors are just Tulips, and they are all going to zero. So I had to go find his boost. And Tulips gave me, on the Fed Up episode, 100,000 sats. And I guess I missed it. I am so sorry, Tulips. But Tulips says, Tulips, great big massive amounts of Bitcoin. I am pretty much inspired by your Cathedral series. Not to follow on your steps, but to find my own. Develop it and develop it and make the world better, according to me. Community service. The cold card seed phrase algorithm has been compromised. Get your shit out and remember it is Tulips and it is all going to zero. Thank you, Tulips. I do appreciate it. I really do. 100,000 sats is certainly nothing to sneeze at. Paul Cernine with 500 sats says, thank you for another insightful episode, which gets me to thinking about life in a rural community. Amish, Mormons, they all focus more on family as wealth. And I guess we all could profit by taking a step back from our rat race and ask ourselves what we really cherish. And let me, the way that Fountain.fm, their website, they're clipping, if you didn't know, if your boost is too long, it clips it. So I've got to actually click on it so I can get the full thing that was said. So let me read this again. I guess we could all profit by taking a step back from our rat race and ask ourselves what we really cherish is in life. Someday we'll meet to discuss these topics on the other side. Yes, we will, Paul. I'm looking forward to that. Don't know how it's going to happen because I am sat poor, sad puppy face. But yeah, I'm looking forward to a way to get together with listeners and jaw about that, because that's really important. I've had yet another discussion with my sister about what we're looking at as wealth. Is it really numbers in Vanguard, stock accounts? Is it really numbers in, the savings accounts of various companies that we hold? And, we hold about there's like 4 total. But honestly, they're just like LLCs that, like, we've got one condo in Santa Fe that has its own LLC so that it's firewalled against another condo that has its own LLC to firewall it against the first condo, and we just rent those out. I mean, that's all that business is just, it holds a piece of property in Santa Fe, and we've got a property manager that keeps it basically filled with people, and they pay rent. It's not really, it's a company technically, but it's not like, it's not like we're making widgets, right? So is that wealth? If we're just looking at dollar signs, I have to remind everybody under the sun that those dollars are buying less and less and less every single year, and it's decreasing. The purchasing power of those dollars have been increasing at an ever exponential rate over the last few years, since COVID, essentially. Actually, if you want to go all the way back to 1913, I don't blame you, but I'm just talking about in the recent past. Yeah, like, or should we convert that quote unquote wealth into actual livable utility to where the family can all relocate to essentially the mountains in Colorado? So that instead of, somebody in my family picking up the phone and saying, I need your help, and me having to go buy a plane ticket to effect that help, and then wait a day for to get on the plane, and then God only knows what happens during the plane ride, and then rent a car. So that, I mean, honestly, wouldn't it be better if I could just walk down the street to one of my other family members' house to go help them? I could be there in 15 minutes. Maybe it's a 30-minute car drive. That seems like more wealth to me than a whole bunch of numbers sitting on a balance sheet somewhere that I'm not necessarily sure if I'm the owner of. Because it could all, like Tulips always says, it's all going to zero. Jason High with 250 sats says, a few years ago, my hermit meter was telling me to sell everything, buy a sailboat, and find some deserted tropical island to anchor at, occasionally sailing to other exotic locales. My wife told me no. Yeah, no, because that's what I'm seeing. Nobody knows what wealth is anymore. And I don't know, it's hard to describe. It took a lot for me to bust out of the mental box that I'd been put in since I was a kid. And I look at wealth much, much differently now, as you guys know. But look around yourself. If you start questioning, if I've gotten into your head and you've started to question, even at the lightest touch, what wealth really is, what wealth really means, and what real wealth could really do, then start asking your friends questions, your friends and your family members, just light questions about, probing what they think wealth is. The answers may start to surprise you, and maybe they don't, but I have a sneaky suspicion that they will. Nick Dose with 253 sats says, cheers, right back at you. Nostr Gang with 101 sats, which is technically a palindrome boost, says absolutely freaking nothing, because Nostr Gang, she just doesn't really ever say anything. But I do appreciate the sats. And that's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use, where Sailor sells his Bitcoin. Well, he didn't sell them all. He sold 1,690 Bitcoin and raises $653 million from selling more strategy shares. This is out of CoinDesk, written by James Van Straten. Bitcoin treasury firm Strategy raised $108.6 million last week through the sale of 1,690 Bitcoin, and then raised an additional $653.1 million from selling 6.59 million shares of common stock, according to a Monday filing. The company used the Bitcoin sale proceeds to repurchase 1.152 million shares of its variable rate preferred stock, STRC, for $108.6 million. The Bitcoin sales reduced Strategy's holdings to 840,447 Bitcoin, acquired for $63.36 billion at an average price of $75,385 per coin. The coins were sold at an average price of $64,262 net of fees and expenses. Strategy directed $650 million of the proceeds from its common stock sales to its dollar reserve, lifting the balance to $4.65 billion as of August the 9th. The remaining $3.1 million was added to the company's cash balance. Following the latest transaction, Strategy has $785.2 million remaining under its preferred stock repurchase program and $1 billion available under its MSTR common stock repurchase plan. So they diluted their shareholders again. under, not the best circumstances, but also not the worst circumstances. He really wants that S&P listing. He really wants to basically have S&P give him a preferred stock position rate, a stamp of approval. Essentially, it's not like going over to Moody's and getting your stock rated. Having S&P actually list your stock is sort of like kind of trumps whatever the ratings agencies actually says. In many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases. And that's where he's going. That's what he wants. That's why he's doing all this. That's why he's selling Bitcoin essentially at a loss, although it depends on, if you want to get granular about it, you can say, okay, well, which coins did he sell? Did he sell the ones that only cost him, $60,000, per coin, and he sold it at 64 because you could actually kind of say that he made a profit on it? But we only ever have the average purchase price at essentially being at $75,000, and he's selling at 65, and it's caused the price of Bitcoin to drop more because it's just sell the news. Oh my God, he sold some Bitcoin, sell the news. Because, and I don't have the story, but H100 is a Bitcoin treasury company, and it's Adam Back's outfit. While Saylor sold 1,690 Bitcoin, at the same time, H100 bought 2,500 Bitcoin. But you're not really hearing about that. And so they essentially, not only did they buy all the coins immediately as Michael Saylor was selling them, they bought 1,000 more coins. And it's not reflected in the price because the only thing that gets news is what Michael Saylor does. So the only news that you can sell is Michael Saylor news when it comes to shit like this. And I'm not a fan of H100. The luster of Bitcoin treasury companies has basically been lost. Now we're just kind of, everybody's wading in the shallow end of the pool. We're all waiting for Adult Swim. I swear to God. And maybe one of these days they'll write an Adult Swim story in something called Nostr Magazine. Nostrmag.com. That's nostrmag.com. Nostrmag.com. Nostr Magazine. What is it? I'm honestly, to tell you the truth, I'm not quite sure. It looks to be a full website that has stories, but it's a little rough. I'm just gonna say it that way. Let me see what it has a login, and I can choose to connect with a Nostr extension. So I'm gonna do that. Confirm. And I'm using my GetAlbi browser extension to get into Nostr Magazine. And it says, oh, I've successfully signed up to Nostr Magazine. Yay. Okay, so now there's latest stories. Let me get to one in the latest stories, and I'll read a little bit of this one. Yeah, this website needs some help, but it's okay. Say, what happened this week in the luxury world of travel? Oh, interesting. The cruise that got banned mid-sail is a small story. Let's start with a story that dominated private travel conversations this week. On July 10th, Turkish authorities blocked the Scarlet Lady, a Virgin Voyages ship chartered by Atlantis Events, from docking at Istanbul. The vessel was carrying 2,000 passengers, mostly from the United States, on a 10-day journey from Athens to Venice. The official reason? Local officials said the voyage didn't fit Turkey's moral values and social structure. The cruise was organized for LGBTQ plus travelers. This seems to be like a kind of like a headline news, but also like there's a lot of travel. I've kind of been over this website a few times. There's a lot of travel here. And I'm not exactly sure who's behind the helm of Nostr Magazine, but the reason I'm bringing it to you is because I think this is great. I think this is totally awesome that somebody built Nostr magazine. And it doesn't matter right now if it's just travel. It kind of looks to me, it's like somebody just trying to get something off the ground. And maybe they're using Nostr as the way to publish the actual web page because, and I can't remember how. I brought you that news weeks ago on this show, and I can't remember how it's done. But you can publish a website directly to a Nostr relay and have it essentially be available to anybody on the web anywhere, whether they're a Nostr user or not. And there are some issues with nostrmag.com, but if they keep going with it, I'll bet you they get them hammered out. It's nice to see somebody still building. Like I just keep seeing people building all over the place on Nostr. And everybody keeps saying, other people keep saying Nostr's dead. No, it's not. Got Nostr magazine right here, bitches. Go check it out. Nostrmag.com, nostrmag.com. See, I just wanted to look at something else, but I can't really find it. I was kind of looking to see who was behind Nostr magazine to see if they've put their names on who to contact. Let's see. There is a contact right down here at the bottom. Let's see what it says. I can send them a direct message. Okay. Well, that's fine. I'll worry about doing that later. I'm pretty sure, hopefully the direct message is actually just publishing a note directly to the person behind Nostr Mag on Nostr. Just it's cool to see new stuff, even if it doesn't look all that great. Maybe we can use that contact us link and go scroll all the way down to the bottom and actually send them a message and say, hey, your pictures are too big. The text is way too small, blah, 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 blah. See if they can we can give them some help on user experience. Okay. On to this one. Bitdeer increased Bitcoin mining. Again, I'll read it again. Bitdeer increased Bitcoin mining output by nearly 5-fold in the second quarter, Zoltan Vardai from Cointelegraph. Bitdeer mined 2,694 Bitcoin during the second quarter of 2026, up nearly 5-fold from 565 Bitcoin a year earlier. The miner closed the quarter with 150 Bitcoin held on its balance sheet, which is down 90% from the 1,502 Bitcoin it held a year earlier, according to the company's Q2 report. Bitdeer liquidated its entire 943 Bitcoin treasury in February, citing liquidity decisions rather than a shift away from its core Bitcoin mining business. Bitdeer is among the Bitcoin mining companies that have expanded into AI data centers and high-performance computing. In August, it signed a 16-year lease valued at $4.7 billion for 121 megawatts of AI computing capacity in Norway. The company also reported $228.8 million in Q2 revenue. That's up 47% from $155.6 million 1 year earlier. Self-mining revenue accounted for $168.4 million of the total as average self-mining hash rate jumped 389% to 69.5 exahashes per second. Its net loss did widen to $92.3 million from $62.9 million. Bitdeer's revenue slightly surpassed Wall Street's $225 million consensus estimate, according to analyst estimates compiled by Yahoo Finance. The company's shares rose 1.5% in pre-market trading on Monday after a 15% decline over the past month. So there you go. Here we have an example of a Bitcoin mining company that is not stopping mining Bitcoin. They're just expanding into AI. Does that mean that they will never stop mining Bitcoin? I don't know, but they haven't stopped yet. And this brings me to the question of looking at the landscape of miners. As Bitcoin hash rate continues to fall and all these miners that basically cut their teeth on mining Bitcoin go whole hog into nothing but AI, this is going to open up a lot of opportunities for people who are not all that interested in anything but the Bitcoin ecosystem and mining Bitcoin. It's going to open up the ecosystem for much smaller miners. It's going to open up the ecosystem to things like single bit axes, old S9, S19s from Antminer. It's going to open up a whole bunch of stuff. And I just don't see any problems of declining hash rate right now, because honestly, we have way more hash rate than we need to secure the network as it is. And that's from our high of zettahash. We had like 1.1 zettahashes of hash power at one point or another, and that has since fallen to this morning 902 exahashes per second. It's fine. We were fine at 300 exahashes per second. We were fine at 200. We were fine at 100. And that was not all that long ago. It's not like people weren't aware of what Bitcoin was, and that it's a computer system, and that it potentially could be attacked, and that you would need this much money to be able to successfully attack it. And even at 100 exahashes per second, it was like, fuck you, that's way too expensive to attack. I'm going to go attack something else. So I just don't worry about the hash rate. But I do see opportunities on the horizon rising out of the declining hash rate situation, and Bitdeer is probably going to benefit, or one of the people that benefits. Finally, to end the show on this Monday, North Korea's Kimsuki integrates artificial intelligence into cyber attacks that target crypto and finance. Danny Park, The Block. North Korean hacker group Kimsuki is using local AI systems to target cryptocurrency and financial firms with sophisticated cyber attacks, according to a report released Monday. The South Korean cybersecurity firm found evidence that the group built and operated 3 local large language model environments using Ollama, GPT-4, and MSTY. I guess we call it Misty. These tools allow offline operation and support retrieval augmented generation, enabling hackers to make queries without sending data to external cloud services. The group has also collected libraries and frameworks to embed language models into custom software, along with the AI coding assistant Cursor and speech-to-text tools. Genians said, and that's the people that made the report, Genians said this activity focused on integrating existing open source AI models into malware development, data analysis, and attack automation. Quote, this provides concrete evidence that the Kimsuki-affiliated threat actor is moving beyond one-off experimentation with AI and is continuously preparing to integrate the technology into actual attack capabilities, the report noted. Nonetheless, the research firm stated that Kimsuki appeared to remain focused on the integration of existing AI technologies rather than creating entirely new AI models from scratch. That's the dumbest thing that I think I'm going to read in this report. Of course, they're not going to build their own. Do you have any idea how expensive that is? This is a hacker group, not a fucking corporation. Talk about duh. God, Lord. At the same time, Genians said it found evidence that Kimsuki continues to use generative AI to produce polished phishing documents themed around digital assets, investment strategies, and fintech services. I'm pausing because that's the one that's going to hurt the most. After all the red team work, there's a lot of companies that have really high quality reports that have been handed to them about their particular software, product offering, whatever. And a lot of these guys that are being handed these reports are immediately handing it off to their tech teams. And these guys are repairing shit and rewriting code because of red team efforts. So what's going to be left, at least in the near to medium term, is psyching you out through an email that looks very official, that's extremely well written. Because remember how you could spot a phishing email from a mile away because of bad grammar? Yeah, not anymore. I don't even have to speak Korean, and I can write a Korean letter that is grammatically correct, perfectly spelled, whatever. and send it to a whole bunch of Koreans and try to get their shit. And they would just look at it and they would not be able to firsthand dismiss the email because it's clearly a foreigner trying to write in Korean. That world no longer exists. And right there was one of the main barriers to entry into a victim's mind, was that many victims could look at it and say, dude, you can't even write English. You're not, no, and then just delete it. But now they're able to pass that one barrier. And they're able to do a lot more. So it's this phishing, these upcoming phishing expeditions that everybody's going to have to really, really, really be wary of. In fact, this might be the time, if you've never gotten one, to sign up for Proton Mail. I think they still have some kind of free package. I'm not exactly sure. But get a different email address and then start only giving that email address out to the people that you know. And not only do you know them, but you interact with them regularly. Don't give them to companies. Don't give the new email to companies. Don't give it to people that you don't know. Don't use it to sign up with anything on the web. Use like a Gmail account for that, right? And start treating maybe your old email account as more secondary and start moving to something like Proton Mail or another email address entirely as what will start to become your new primary, but keep your wits about you as to who you send that new email to, because this shit's going to get worse. Continuing, some documents closely imitated materials from a Korean AI-powered investment platform featuring natural language, consistent and professional formatting, and design elements typical of AI-generated content. North Korean hackers stole $2.02 billion worth of cryptocurrency last year, including $1.5 billion hack of Bybit crypto exchange, according to Chainalysis. The attack methods span from simple phishing emails to embedding IT workers, actual human workers, inside of crypto service companies to target sensitive internal data. Hackers are becoming ever more sophisticated with the advent of artificial intelligence. Near Protocol co-founder Ilya Poloshushkin, I can't pronounce it, said that AI is supercharging hackers' ability to find software vulnerabilities faster than the traditional security teams can patch them. The recent $100 million exploit of Cold Card, Bitcoin hardware wallets, is suspected to stem from an obscure vulnerability that AI uncovered. Well, the Cold Card thing is still ongoing. It's calmed down, but it's still ongoing. I think I don't want to say this, but every Cold Card user that could get hacked has probably already been hacked. I say probably. If your shit is still on a vulnerable Cold Card, you need to get it off. You need to get it off right now if you haven't already done it. If you are on a vulnerable Cold Card and your shit hasn't been stolen, honestly, I'm not sure why, because the sweep to me looks like it's automated. It looks like it's a bot just continuously sweeping addresses that it's found. And there's been a couple of instances where people have put like 100,000 sats on a Cold Card wallet that was that the address was generated with the bad firmware. Anything after 4.0.0, anything after that is vulnerable. And they would sometimes they'd even like roll dice to add entropy to that bad shit. And they'd roll dice twice, not 100 times, not 100 throws, not 50, not 10, but anywhere between 2 and like 9 times they would throw dice to add entropy just to test at what point the funds don't get swept. And bad entropy or wallets generated with 4.0.1 with 2 dice rolls, those bounces are getting swept within 10 seconds of putting them into that wallet address. So just please, please, please be aware. This doesn't get anything. This doesn't go anywhere but down. It doesn't get anything but worse. This is why my become a hermit meter has now ticked over to 99.2%. I am 99.2% likely to say fuck it and get a cave Come on down to Dave's Caves and get your hermitage for free. I'm just saying, man. Because this is the kind of world that when I talk about like the Amish and the Quakers and stuff like and the Mennonites, they don't have near these problems because they're not near as attached to the digital realm as we all find ourselves. And again, I will leave you with this question. In your mind, what is wealth to you? Is wealth money in a bank that you access over the web that could be hacked? Or is money family that nobody can take away from you unless they try to violently commit harm against them, in which case at least you can act to protect them? At least you could do that. This digital realm, the entirety of everything that we know as digital is all under attack all at once. We can't trust media. We can't trust what we see. We can't trust what we hear. We don't know now if somebody says, "Hey, we've got a hacked phone call conversation from, I don't know, President Trump to somebody else," and it's just completely fake, and we don't know. And if we do know now, we won't be able to tell in the future. So the question, what is wealth, I think is probably the most important question that all of us really need to step back, take a breath, touch grass, and ask ourselves as we stare into the sky without any digital shit or electronic shit anywhere close to us, as far as we can get away from them. Ask the question, what is wealth to me? It doesn't matter what I think your wealth should be, or what your wealth should look like, or in what form, fashion it should be in. That should not be important to you at all. What your mommy thinks your wealth should look like should not be important to you. What do you want your wealth to look like? What is wealth to you, and what form does it take? I think it's a good question to ask. I'll see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.